We're not back. Now we're back. So what I was saying.
That was great stuff you were just saying the last 40 seconds or so. That was the best you've ever been, I think.
Yeah, I know, exactly. Remember what we were doing at the X and we went offline, and it was when I went on the whole thing about going for McEichel?
Yes.
Thank God that doesn't exist anywhere. I know we lost all of it, and then they've turned their season around, and now I would have looked like a complete nuts because I was basically saying they should tank.
I have it on tape, and I'm going to blackmail you with it.
Actually, there's this guy Lawrence Alberts, it's M. Galliford on my blog that he's my arch nemesis, and he asked this question all the time, like a month ago. When are you, as the media, going to quote unquote call it a season? And I'm like, I don't even understand what the hell you mean, call it a season. And for some reason, he doesn't tweet me that anymore. Like, what should we, like, stop covering the games? So anyway, this guy last night on Twitter, after the power play in all caps, like, when are you going to, grow some nuts and get Bruno fired, and this power play is killing us? And their power play has been one of the best in the league since December, if you think about it, at least statistically. And during this stretch, he didn't tweet me the night before when they went 2 for 5 against Vancouver. And, during this entire stretch of wins, their power play has won them games. And this guy, it's like one bad power play, he just freaks out. Anyway, so that's where, like, Twitter sometimes, it's, you know what I mean? I mean,
and I'll give my perspective because I have had, when I was a beat writer, when I covered the Vikings, when I covered the Twins on a daily basis, Twitter did not exist. Twitter didn't really come into being until I was a columnist, and it's different for a columnist because you're not just putting out basic information on the team like you do constantly. You are the source for information in the team. You are tweeting information constantly. I'm more picking my spots, but I think being on Twitter in the old days, had it existed, would have been a good tool, the way you described it, which means you miss something and somebody can point it out to you. But I find it to be an incredible distraction in terms of being a writer. Because you're always looking down at your screen when you probably should be watching the game.
I was telling Zucker and Coyle, Zucker and Carter, actually, the morning that Carter got hurt. And Zucker. Oh, my God.
Uh-oh.
Yeah.
You're the jinx.
Holy mackerel. That's not good. So anyway, the morning that Carter and I was telling him, they sit next to each other in the locker, and we were talking about the same question. Carter is like the most inquisitive person I've ever met about my job. He wants to know. I mean, and I'm not talking like some players, like, what are you hearing? Like, he wants to know how do you become a sports writer? What do you do during games? Like, it's almost like he wants to get in the media business. Like, it's really interesting.
Tell him not to.
That morning, you should have seen Zucker's face. Talk about a guy that just absolutely didn't care. I basically told Carter my entire life story that morning. It was hilarious. And Zucker's like unstrapping his gear and just like kind of staring at me like, enough. But anyway, then I started telling Zucker and Carter about the kind of the old days pre-Twitter. Like, you would sometimes skip morning skates because what could you miss, right? You would, I remember this one time, I shouldn't say, but I was in Washington, and my buddy, who is now an attorney in Washington, for a very high up attorney for the government, he was at Georgetown. He calls me up. He's like, hey, let's go to Atlantic City and play poker. And it was like 11:30 at night when I got in, and I'm like, well, I got a morning skate in the morning. So I called the Miami Herald writer up, David Neal. I'm like, hey, cover me at the morning skate. And like, he covered me at the morning skate, and you made those deals all the time. The other thing is, after the trade deadline the other day, it was like, never would a beat writer go to the morning skate. Like, you know what I mean? Like, right. After the trade deadline, you just kind of mail in the rest of the season. You just cover games drunk. So you know what I mean? Like, after everything was the morning newspaper. There was no Twitter. There was no online. We were talking with Chuck. I was talking to Chuck recently. We were in Calgary. And we were talking about kind of the old days in Florida. I was telling him this story when I covered games drunk, but it was the same thing. Like, if they made a trade, I remember the morning they traded Dan Boyle to the Tampa Bay Lightning. They made the trade. I didn't even call my editor. I just went to lunch. We were also in Washington, but there was no urgency. Well, you didn't have to tweet it. You didn't have to write it real quick. You just kind of did your thing.
The challenge in the old days was to get information at any time during the day and that you could get in the morning paper that nobody else would have.
I had so many scoops on firings and hirings in Florida. It was ridiculous. And one of my biggest ones, was here at the All-Star game in 2004 when I was covering the All-Star game. Oh, this was actually really awkward. After the All-Star game that night, a bunch of us writers, like you do at the end of every big event, you go to a big dinner or whatever. Mm-hmm. And so I was supposed to go to dinner right up here the road at what would be now Rock Bottom, I think, or it used to be Rock Bottom.
There's still a Rock Bottom down there.
Okay, so it was right where that is. And I was staying at the Marriott downtown. And this is, again, who knew that a year later I'd be covering the Wild, right? But earlier that season, Mike Keenan was fired by Rick Dudley. He took over as interim coach. I'm covering the All-Star game, and I'm starting to get rumblings in the All-Star box from sources. And again, old days, there's no it was like, I don't even remember. I probably got a beep on my pager or something. That Rick Dudley was going to, when the Panthers returned to Florida after the All-Star game, that John Torchetti, who's now the Iowa coach, would take over as interim coach, and Rick would go back to being the GM solely. And blah, 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 blah. And so I get this story, so I go back to the Marriott, and, I'm going to break it for the morning paper. And so I waited till, post-deadline to go out and meet them. And so then the next morning, we're all on the same flight back, and they're all getting calls from their, editors. And it was kind of like that. Those were the days. You actually had a scoop. Now you have a scoop for 10 seconds. Biggest scoop of my career here in Minnesota was Parisian Suitor. I had it for 10 seconds because then all of a sudden it's just everywhere, right? And think of how hard I worked on that one. I'm hiding in freaking bushes. I'm stalking Parisi at the airport.
You actually were. You're not making any of this stuff up.
I know. I mean, I was hiding in a bush at the St. Paul airport, waiting for, Neil Sheehy to get back with Craig Leopold, Mike Yo, and Chuck
Did you do the sniper thing? Did you actually wear the ghillie?
No, but I've told this story before. It actually, where I was hiding, it was by the fence there, and there's a state patrol building there, and a patrolman actually walked out and, I'm lucky I wasn't gunned down. I kind of had to quickly explain. So I'm a sports writer, and the Wild might be I actually remember saying to him, the Wild might be signing Parisian Suitor, and just got to see if the agent's going to get off this private plane with the owner. And he's like, Parisian Suitor? So anyway, luckily he was a Wild fan.
We are running down last minute of SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com here at the local on a Wednesday night. We'll be at Kieran's Irish Pub, 5 o'clock. Next Wednesday, I'll be at O'Gara's, 5 o'clock. This Friday, 5 o'clock. Next Friday, before I go to spring training. Fans are welcome to show up at any of these sites, and if you do show up, we will include you in the show somehow. Michael, final thought before we get out of here.
Well, I love the local because they play hockey. I've been sitting here staring.
It's about the only sport they'll play other than soccer.
Red Wings, Penguins, repeat of the Stanley Cup Finals. The when Hossa screwed himself both ways by not getting a cup win. Awesome. I love the local.
And we are going to give away the $25 gift card to
Ben Feldman.
Let's give it to Ben Feldman because he showed up here and asked a good question. I think that's a good suggestion. Yeah. Ben, we appreciate you showing up. Everyone, we had a couple of people come out to O'Gara's last Friday to ask Michael questions. People are always welcome to show up. We will start trying to broadcast the shows live as we do them in the vicinity of where we're doing them in case anybody wants to come and have a beer and listen in. Again, thank you to everyone. Thank you to Evan Davis. Thanks to Katie for handing out the gift card. Thanks to Ben for showing up. Thank you to Michael Russo, as always. Michael,
we're done? That's it?
Well, you can keep talking, but we're going to turn the mics off.
I'm just kidding. I actually got to get to the lagoon for this.
Unless you want to say one more thing that can possibly get you in trouble.
No, actually, I got to hang out here for a little bit. I'm waiting. Actually, the Miami Herald writer George Richards is in town.
Oh, great.
He's coming with me to this thing.
Well, I'll buy you a beer so you can do your speech drunk.
Yeah.
I think that'd be even more entertaining.
That'd be awesome.
Thank you, Michael. Appreciate
it.
That's Michael Russo. This is Jim Souhan. SOUHAN-UNFILTERED.com. Talk to you soon.